Hello and welcome back. Alright, so in this video we're going to take a look at how we pull in all of the data that we got from, or that we put into GitHub, put this into Windows, and create a new Visual Studio project, and get that all building, and then make sure our Xcode project still works after we've uploaded all of our changes. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm looking at GitHub at the tic-tac-toe project that I created. I'm going to go ahead and copy this URL because this is where I'm going to need to clone my repository from. So this is Git Bash. I'm using this because it has some nice features. One, it helps me not have to switch contexts between the Windows command prompt and the OS X command prompt, basically just Linux. I can use the ls commands for directory listings, and it also has an SSH agent that runs in the background for me that saves my passphrase key so I don't have to retype that in every time. Okay, so if none of that made sense to you, that's fine. So I'm going to do git clone, and I'm going to do the URL. So now by default, when you run this, it's going to add it into a directory that is the name of this little package right before this git. That's not exactly what I want. What I want is tic-tac-toe. I don't want those dashes, so I can specify a directory name to clone into. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that command. It should remember my passphrase from now on. We'll see. So git clone. Okay, so we got all of our data down. So if I do a directory listing, see I have a tic-tac-toe project. In here, I'm going to go into the projects directory. And you can see that we need to add our Visual Studio stuff. So to do that, I'm actually going to go ahead and jump into Visual Studio. Let's do File, New Project. Make sure we got C++ selected over here. Click 132 Console App. Change the name to tic-tac-toe. And we're going to change the directory path that we're looking at. Ignore that. Alright, let's go to Documents. Windows was a little confused on the path. Projects, tic-tac-toe, source, sorry, not source. Projects. And then here I'm going to create a new directory called the Visual Studio. Alright. And this is where I'm going to create my project file at. Now we want to make sure that we have the create directory for solution unchecked. We don't want to create another additional directory to house just the solution file. Visual Studio is always going to create a directory for us, and we're going to have to go clean that up. Alright, so let's click OK. It's going to bring us our little Win32 app wizard. We'll click Next. We want to check the MD project and make sure we're on a console app. We don't want any files generated for us. We already have source code files that we're bringing in from Git. Alright, let's finish. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and close. So what I need to do is come over here to Git. I'm actually just going to start a Windows Explorer. And so now I'm going to jump into my Visual Studio directory. And there you can see I have a project named or a folder named tic-tac-toe. That's where Visual Studio created our project for us. So I'm going to control double click. And that's just going to open up that folder in a new window. I'm going to select everything and move it down a directory, or up a directory. And then delete that tic-tac-toe folder. Perfect. So now if we jump back over into Visual Studio, we can do File, Open, Project. And it's looking in the right spot already, so I can just open that solution. And it opened it up just fine. Perfect. Let's go ahead and right-click on this, and let's take a look at some of the properties. So where is the build output going to go? That's one question we should care about. And it's going to go under the solution dir directory and under our configuration. So debug up here, or we can specify release, or we can create our custom configurations. So just like looking at this, I was interested to see where the build output's going to go. Like we have our build folder in OS X going under our project directory. I wanted to make sure that Visual Studio is going to do the same thing. And it looks like it is. So we can go ahead and close this property page because that's exactly what we were looking for. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to add our main CPP file into our filters. So we look at our filters over here. What we can do is right click on these source files and we can click Add, And we want to click on existing item. Okay, and that's going to open us up into the project directory by default. We need to go up 2 levels, jump into our source folder, and click on main. And we'll click add. And what this does is just adds a link to the file. If you click F4, you can click the properties, or this properties tab. It will show up the properties for the file. And so we can see that we're still looking at that source main CPP file. Perfect. The relative path also shows that information. Here we just want to make sure that it didn't actually copy that CPP file anywhere. Okay, so go away properties. Oops, don't want to see you anymore. Okay, so now what we do, just build. Control-Shift-B starts the build. Build started. I'm going to go ahead and open up the CPP file while it's building. I don't know why it's taking so long. Okay, we see build succeeded. And this is indeed the same CPP file that we had in Git, so that's great. So now if we hit Control F5, we can debug, and we can see, hey, hello world is output. Perfect. So now what we want to do is we want to jump into our Git shell again, our bash shell, and add our new files that we need to care about. So come over into Git. Go into our Git, do ls, so we need to go into Visual Studio, and we can see that we have a lot of files in here. So what do we actually care about? The files that we actually care about are the tic-tac-toe solution file, the tic-tac-toe VCX project file, and the tic-tac-toe VCX project.filters file. Everything else is pretty much a user file that we don't care about, I believe. Yeah. And then you can see we got that debug folder right there. That's lovely. VM's messed up with my positioning. But the debug folder right here is where the output is. So we can look into debug, and you can see that we do in fact have all the output for our project and our tic-tac-toe.executable. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff that got output. Okay, so if we do a git status, we can say, hey, we got a new file, solution, our tic-tac-toe solution, vxproj, filters. Looks good enough to me. Let's do a commit. Added Visual Studio project files. All right, and then we need to do a git push. Oh, my SSH agent is not running in the background. I'll have to tweak that so we don't keep getting bugged by the passphrase question. Okay, so we pushed all of our code up there, so let's go ahead and jump over into Chrome, and let's go click on source. My mouse. Something went funky. You can see it's hovering where my mouse is, and that's interesting. You can see, so my last comment was added Visual Studio project files. We can click on projects, and we can see Visual Studio is indeed there. So perfect. Let's go ahead and jump over into OS 10 and go into our terminal. And what we want to do is just do a git pull. And what this is going to do is going to pull down all of the data that we just added. Oh, it's complaining. Please specify which I want to pull from the master. Oh, I'm sorry. Origin master. And it pulled down all the things. So if we go and look up here what it was complaining at, it was telling me that, hey, I have asked me to pull without telling me which branch I want to merge with. And so I need to specify that in there. Okay. So now we do an ls. We can go into projects. There should be a Visual Studio folder. Perfect, there is. And we can see that we do indeed have our project files. And so let's go ahead and jump over into Xcode. We didn't make any changes, but oops. Control-Shift-B obviously does not build in Xcode. Command B, build succeeded, perfect, and bring up the little window, we can run. So there we have it. We have our Visual Studio project created. We have our Xcode project created, and we have all of our source code stored up in GitHub. And in the next video, we can actually start doing some real work on our tic-tac-toe game. All right, thanks.